Last month, me and my mate Ed participated in the 2021 GMT Game Jam, which at this point is one of the biggest annual game jams. We produced Mr. Blobbin's Big Adventure, which honestly was a little disappointing gameplay wise. However, in this devlog I want to explore the game's development because it was the first time someone other than myself has used my game engine. On one hand, this is a huge step for the engine, but on the other it really highlighted issues with the engine that I need to address if I'm to continue work on it. So let's jump into the game's development and then we'll hear from Ed about the jam, the game and the engine, which will be interesting because he has a good game development experience and is a professional C++ developer. When the theme was announced as Join Together, we opened up a Google Doc and got to work brainstorming ideas. Inspired by games such as Sliver.io, Loco Roco and Katamari Damacy, many of our initial ideas involved joining small things together to create one large thing. We also considered what the engine could do. I had recently released Super Word Chain, so I suggested using platforming mechanics, which led us to think of lemmings. This culminated in the idea of lemmings but with blobs, giving the player the ability to grow but having to sacrifice that growth in order to make it across the level. We joked about making Mr. Blobby the main character, which eventually turned into Mr. Blobbins, who gathers blobbins to progress through the world. As already mentioned, we used my pre-existing platforming mechanics to create this game. This allowed us to focus on AI for the blobbins and objects to navigate the world. Primarily, Ed took charge of the AI and I created the objects. However, we did a reasonable amount of pair programming to get Ed back into C# and teach him the oddities of the engine. The AI was tricky to develop. We wanted a line of blobbins to follow you perfectly, however this was difficult with the engine limitations. What we tried was creating NPCs that perfectly did everything the player does with a short delay, however this went a little strange. The first implementation of this could desync with the player and create a beautifully chaotic scene of NPCs running about. Ed refined this to be a little smarter, with them only following the player when they got out of a certain range, and only jumping at the exact same point the player did. This worked out really quite well until later when we added verticality to the levels, as the blobbins couldn't really move up or down, and unfortunately lessened the effect of joining together. Either way, I think we got some interesting results with the blobbins. We also needed world objects to help you progress. First we added ladders which allow you to move vertically, trampolines or trampolians as Ed nicknamed them, to lessen fall damage, and bombs to destroy obstacles and free blobbins. I created simple sprites for each of these objects and began laying them into a simple level for testing. When we had all these mechanics in place, I began working on actual levels. Unfortunately, due to the time limit, they were pretty limited, however I like how they slowly introduce each mechanic. If I had more time, I would have loved to have created a big level with everything happening multiple times, but alas, I did not. Whilst I worked on the levels, Ed added the object buying mechanic, which was crucial to the game's balance. Luckily, at this point Ed had confidence with the codebase, and he was able to implement it by just looking at the buying buttons I did for Project Tarum. As Ed finished up the buttons, I began restructuring the menus, giving them a consistent colour scheme that matches the colour palette used for the rest of the game. Unfortunately, as I worked on that, Ed found the game's physics broken in some areas, with the player falling through some floors seemingly at random. I left Ed to dig around the platforming code whilst I finished up the menus, but something about it felt off. Some of the platforms worked perfectly but others didn't. Once I was free, I looked into the level files and adjusted the platforms to be 1 grid square bigger, and it worked. I don't know why, and I don't know how my code has gotten to this point. It's clearly a mess, but it worked. Which is really a great philosophy when it comes to game jams. Finally, to finish off the game, I added sounds. As usual, I used BFXR for sound effects and OpenGameArt.org for music. With all of this in place, the game was done, and like I mentioned at the start, it was quite disappointing. However, the development process was really eye-opening. Let's see what Ed has to say. Hey Ed.
Hello.
You ready to be interviewed about the game?
Yeah. Before we start, do you want to hear a joke?
Yeah, sure.
.NET framework. Good night, everyone.
Oh my goodness. That's exactly what I need from this. So Ed, let's start with your Game Jam experience. Can you remember when we did Global Game Jam 2015?
Oh yes. Robbie the Robot. That was Unity, wasn't it?
That was
C
Unity,
Sharp
yeah.
as well. Yeah, them's were the days.
Them to other days. And was that the last time you used C Sharp?
No, I actually did a bit of C Sharp. A few months back at the start of lockdown. I was experimenting with an idea I had for using Word to define report templates, and I needed to process docx files.
Cool. But primarily, you're a C++ developer, right?
Oh yes.
That's amazing.
Something compile time, Turing completeness.
Excellent. So how long have you been doing C++?
God, man, since we started uni. Actually, no, before that.
Let's say almost a decade then.
2009, give or take.
2009. Oh wow, over a decade. I didn't realize it was so long ago. I thought you maybe started around uni, maybe a year or two before.
I did a bit of fiddling back in GCSE.
Yeah, I mean, I was similar. I tried C at one point, like around that time, but it was like I did Hello World, and that was about it.
Yeah, I tried to write a calculator in C++. It didn't go well.
And now you're moving on to my engine, obviously.
Now, actually, all the being a shitty arsehole to you aside, it is not that bad a design.
Yeah.
The that event system you've got, I think, is actually quite good.
Yeah, I've been thinking about clearing it up recently. So you like the event system? How about well, we'll come back to that in a second. So I just want to get your thoughts on the jam itself. So obviously you've done a few jams before in the past. How did did you like the jam? Did you like the game?
Honestly, I think the game we ended up making was absolutely terrible. But what do you expect?
You know what? I completely agree.
Yeah, when we're using a half-built engine on an outdated version of .NET with an outdated version of Monogame, when one person doesn't know how to use it. I mean, it's a miracle we even managed to produce anything, all things considered.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, because in the past we've used other engines for jams. I know we've both used Unreal and we've both used Unity. And
yes, we did.
I mean, do you think that maybe our game jam in 2015 went better?
I think it did, yeah, but we also had 2 more people and a fully developed engine and committed more time to it.
That's very true. We were out in the actual place doing it back then, whereas this was like we were online. I could definitely tell you were very tired on the last day.
Yeah, well, I was.
I mean, did you feel like burnt out and just thought like, oh, I just want to quit, or were you kind of motivated?
Not exactly burnt out. I just felt a bit exhausted.
So yeah, you mentioned that the game was pretty crap. But you managed to work on the AI and you did some UI and you got a bit of all of it really for like what's actually in the engine. So, and like you said a minute ago, you quite like the event system. Like, how did you find working on the AI for those little blobbins?
Oh boy. Right, that was... I want to say I was pulling my hair out, but I don't have any left.
Maybe that was more when you were looking at the physics for the...
No, that wasn't that. It was the blobbins I was pulling my hair out. The physics, I was just completely confused as to why the hell it was happening, as we established.
Yeah, that turned out to be a bit weird in the end, having to change the level like that.
What was it, half a unit in the end? It made it work.
Yeah. So weird.
Yeah, you've managed to write something rather strange there.
But the AI, I mean, you was pulling your hair out of the AI as well.
Yeah, because the blobbins just wouldn't do what I was telling them to do. And we eventually nailed it down so it worked reasonably well.
Yeah, I think it was pretty good in the end. There's a few times where a blobbin would get stuck or they'll run away from you.
Yeah. Oh, that was quite funny. I think that almost adds personality. How they'll sort of just wig out and do the opposite.
I do remember playing the game at one point, seeing a blobbin run away from me and thinking he's running to the end. It makes him look smart.
The illusion of smartness.
So I think you did a cracking job on that. You also did some work on the UI, so you did the instruction screen and you also did the buttons for buying things. I think you also did the click and drag and stuff, didn't you?
Did I? I thought that was you.
It was a bit of a shared effort.
Honestly, I've already forgotten half of what I've done.
So can you remember working on, say, the UI? How did you feel about that? Because it's very manual, isn't it?
It is very manual and very basic, and I think it needs a bit more work. Possibly a system where you define the buttons using XML or some kind of earlier version of HTML. Basically, just include an entire web browser, and that will solve the problem.
That might work quite well.
There's this entire sort of design, I want to call them a design philosophy movement. I've seen it mentioned that basically you shouldn't use anything except for a web browser for user interface. Even if you're creating a desktop application, you should have it spin up a small web server and expose the UI through that.
Do you genuinely believe that, or you just heard it somewhere?
I think there's an argument to be had for it, actually.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking on Discord right now, and that's essentially just a browser.
At the end of the day, same with Steam. Because it means everyone only has to learn sort of one way of building user interfaces, HTML, CSS, and whatnot, which I think, for all its flaws, is quite robust.
True.
The only problem is, it's sort of sometimes a bit of an overkill when all you want is a button with a file path and an OK button as well. Just point the thing at something and make it go, if you grasp what I mean. But at the same time, having it accessible as a web server means you can automate it from other machines that don't even have to be running the same user interface. Same operating system, even, not user interface.
Yeah, that's true. I definitely think there is a benefit of having like UI in like markup, because I have worked with markup and it's so nice just the way you can put things together. But it does take a while to get your head around. Like, I think what I've got with, add a button here and it's this size and it's this position, like it's the obvious way of doing it, but it's not necessarily the nicest, and it makes it very manual. There's definitely a lot more I could be doing to the UI. Some other things I was looking at, I thought we worked well together, like using Git. How did you find that?
Yeah, I think so. Git was the right choice.
Do you remember any moments where it was like, yeah, we definitely had problems merging?
No.
No, it was all very, very nice and neat.
Git is wonderful.
Git is wonderful.
Yes, please don't hurt me, Linus.
So you mentioned about the event system earlier, and how you quite liked that. Did you like? So was that the input events, the collision events, or all of it?
Just how it was architected. I thought it was an alright design. Let me just get it back up, because I've already forgotten how half of it works. Yeah, here we are. But yeah, you can add events to collides and then have that call sort of an arbitrary function and whatnot. And you can define the situation under, I say define, tell it what kind of event it occurs under. It strikes me as reasonably robust.
So you quite like the collision system in the way that it works on classes?
Yeah, how collisions and events all mesh together. I think you've got the right design there.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that.
Now just make it 3D and a C++.
To do it 3D would be awesome, and C++ would be probably better,
arguably.
But I do like C#, and I'm very much accustomed to it.
Yeah, it's what you're used to.
Yeah. How about say input? I know you had some ideas about like using axes and stuff.
Oh yeah, that. But we'd need to rig up interface with joysticks and whatnot first, and such that you could basically define a certain button press as a full push upon a certain joystick axis.
Yeah, I'd love to get some like joystick input. That'd be so cool.
It'd be a nice feature to have, like Unreal has.
Yeah, I think Unity has that as well. They've done like a new input system within the last year or so. So a lot of people are trying it out. How about I don't know how much you actually end up dealing with this, but how did you find like adding sprites and stuff? Did you find setting up graphics for the game easy?
You did all the setting up graphics, if memory serves, because you know how the content system works.
Yeah, I thought maybe you added a few sprites or something. I thought that you did for the instruction screen.
I don't remember doing that. No, I just reused ones you had already had.
Oh, fair enough. And how did you find setting up game objects? Did you like setting properties from a constructor?
Not hugely, to be honest.
Yeah, like that. What do you think could maybe improve it?
I don't know, that's the problem. I know it's really helpful, really constructive, but...
Yeah, no, don't worry. I mean, I think a lot of other game engines use like a UI, and it has all the properties that you can set, and you just manually do it from that UI.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like
the opposite.
Yeah, you're still manually defining it, but it's all in code, which...
Ideally, you'd want to be able to do both.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think? Do you think I could do like a better system? Do you think maybe I could have like inspectors in the level editor? So I'm thinking about separating the level editor from the main engine solution.
You know what? I haven't a clue. It strikes me that this is something you need a lot of experience doing it the wrong way before you have the wherewithal to architect it correctly.
Well, I'm certainly getting a lot of experience doing it the wrong way.
Yeah. Keep doing it the wrong way and then start again, and you'll do it less wrong, and then start again, and hopefully you'll do it the right way on the third or fourth time.
That is wise advice, yeah. Do you have any more advice or final thoughts?
Right. Part of me, I want to build my own engine in C++ and use it for the next game jam. I know I'm not going to quite be able to pull that off, because I don't have the... I just can't be bothered, man. I've been trying to learn a bit of Vulkan, and it is just madness. And also, Visual Studio just decided not to quite play ball right now. But for all future C++ projects that I make with Visual Studio, I plan on doing them as CMake projects, which strikes me as like the platonically correct way of doing a C++ project. Because then you're not bound to opening it in Visual Studio, you can open it in damn near anything.
Nano, Notepad.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Just as long as you've got a CMake install, which is nigh on every operating system, you can just call the CMake file and it will generate the correct project. It'll generate and compile with whatever build chain happens to be installed on that system. So if you run a CMake project on Windows, it'll find Visual Studio and spin that up, or it'll find GCC install and spin that up. And if you're doing it on Linux, it will find the GCC install and spin that up.
That makes it nice and easy.
Oh yeah, and you can have a fully cross-platform project that way.
I do like cross-platform projects.
I think cross-platform is everyone and everything should strive to be cross-platform as possible.
For sure, yeah. That's some things I need to change in my engine.
So long as it's not iOS. iOS is shit.
Would you consider using my engine again?
It would need a lot of improvement. It needs to be updated to .NET Core. It needs to be updated to the latest version of Monogame. The underlying tooling needs to be updated so it can be kept updated easily.
Yeah, I agree. Going through this jam, I've basically made a huge list, and it's basically just like what you've just said, making sure we've got .NET Core, making sure we've got the latest version of Monogame, all that stuff there.
Te properlies.
Yeah, do it properly. Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Ed. I think this is like exactly what I needed. Do you want to say goodbye?
No.
Oh.
Fuck the lot of you. You're all arseholes. To hell with the internet.
I don't know if I can leave that in. Oh, we'll see. Well, thanks to Ed for jamming with me. The game wasn't quite what we expected, but it's really kickstarted me thinking about game engine improvements, which I want to explore more of on my next big game project. I hope you've enjoyed watching this devlog for the 2021 GMT Game Jam. Leave a video a like to let me know you did, and don't forget to subscribe for more great game development content. Thanks for watching, goodbye.